Muy buen día, Andy. Gracias por estar en el canal. Bienvenido. Es un gusto. Bueno, hablando un poco de todas las temáticas que ha hecho en el cine, quisiera preguntarle sobre sus primeros trabajos, que se llama The Hunger. ¿Cómo ves tu evolución respecto a tu trabajo y también en esta primera producción que has participado, ya acreditado?
Okay, welcome to the channel, and like all John always does, we are going earlier in your career. So let's talk about The Hunger and how do you see your evolution going back to the early days and now, man?
Oh gosh, there's quite a lot of question in there. I've been doing this for 45 years or something, and everything has changed completely. When I started in the very early days working for Stuart Freeborn and Dick Smith, it was a very different world. And it was much more a world where you had to invent. No computers to help you, no contacts, no recipes, no magazines. And so you had to be an inventor. And when I started, it was lovely. I was very lucky. My beginning was a complete piece of luck, you know. The first film I ever worked on was The Empire Strikes Back. And, you know, as a starting movie, that's not bad.
John dice que él viene haciendo desde hace 45 años este trabajo, que en esa época todo era distinto, no había revistas, no había internet, se siente muy afortunado y dice que comenzar una película de vampiros no es un mal inicio.
Increíble, porque en cierta parte, aparte de que yo sé que hay muchas cosas para hablar de Legend y eso, pero yo quisiera preguntarle acerca de... Hay una producción que yo vi hace poco y que es súper interesante, que es la vida de Genghis Khan, que es una maravilla de historia. Entonces quisiera preguntarle, ¿cómo fue el proceso no solo del maquillaje ahí, sino el poder estar en una historia distinta? Porque ha hecho temas de espacio, temas de terror, temas de ciencia ficción, pero esto es ya más distinto, ¿no? Algo más histórico.
John is talking that in the many genres that you had worked, like, you know, sci-fi, horror, there is a particular movie because it's a historical one, the one about Genghis Khan. So yeah, how was the process of the makeup and doing something really different, more historical, not that so many sci-fi or horror? So tell us about working in the life of Genghis Khan.
I was asked to go out to Russia by Charlton Heston, and I had to turn him into a Mongol warlord, which meant putting the foam rubber folds above the eyes and the color and the wig and all of this. I mean, nowadays, politically, you would never do this. It'll never happen again, and it really should never have happened. But it is what you used to do. And it was an adventure because I had worked with him previously on a TV show called The Crucifer of Blood, where I'd made him up as Sherlock Holmes and also as Sherlock Holmes disguising himself as a Chinese opium dealer. With a full prosthetic makeup. It was very silly, very cartoon, but he loved it. And that was, you know, so he phoned me up and he asked me, would I go to Russia and do this thing? And I thought, I've never been to Russia. And let's face it, I'm not likely to go there again soon now. And we ended up in Kyrgyzstan near the Chinese border filming this Genghis Khan movie. It was very strange. It was quite odd. It was a clash of cultures, an absolute clash of cultures. I remember the first weekend, Charlton Heston was invited to be the guest of honor at a football match. And we were driven in a car out into this countryside, and it was just rolling green fields with mountains in the distance and about 200 horsemen from various villages. And they just produced this goat in front of us, slaughtered it, and it was the football. And they just grabbed it and rode off with it on horseback to the horizon and then came back again. And we were standing there completely shocked. You know, it was complete culture shock. It was a very strange place to go. But, you know, one of those things where it would never have occurred to me to get a job like that. And yet I had a wonderful time, met lots of lovely people. And, you know, sticking these things, Charlton Heston was very easy to work with because he was totally professional. You know, if you needed him to sit there, he sat there. He was very exact. And I'm fine with that. You know, if you know where you are with an actor, it's easy. You can deal with it. And he was lovely. So, yeah, a bit of an adventure.
I know this movie, this type of movies is not possible in these days, but I'm so happy to listen about the history. It's so crazy. And as a cinephile, it's crazy. I mean, talking about Charlton Heston, those years, I cannot wait to translate. I will translate. And thank you for the answer. John, yo creo que es la respuesta más loca que han dado en el canal. Es interesante, seré breve. Obviamente ahorita no se puede hacer un tipo de película así, John, tú sabes que hay leyes, porque pues él transformó a Charlton Heston después en un maquillaje, pues tú sabes, de un guerrero mongol, Gengis Khan. Él había trabajado con Charlton Heston en una serie sobre Sherlock Holmes, imagínate, si esa serie donde él se vestía como los demás personajes. Una historia loquísima porque sí grabaron en Kirguistán, fueron a ver un partido de fútbol y eso fue loquísimo porque fue en medio de la montaña, muchísimos extras, pero, y es lo que le agradezco, pues nos contó la historia de que Charlton Heston era una persona muy profesional, que no le importaba sentarse por horas. Entonces dice que aunque sea una película que ahorita no puede hacer y que fue algo muy loco, dice que es algo muy bello también.
Qué increíble, man. Y vamos a poder, ya estamos recapitulando todos los géneros que él ha hecho, pero hay uno, los westerns, el último de los mohicanos. Qué historia, ¿no? Y el tema de todo lo que hizo, y la verdad yo quisiera preguntarle, ¿cómo es de pronto experimentar el western? ¿Le gustaría más historias como esa? Ya en la actualidad pues está regresando esa temática, ¿no?
I'm so happy that John mentioned it, and that movie sounds really beautiful in Spanish and in English. El último de los Mohicanos, The Last of Mohicans, freaking classic. So yeah, how was working? I know it's like a revival western. Is the correct term of this movie? So yeah, Jonas, how do you feel working in this particular western? How do you feel about the genre? And wherever you want to talk about this masterpiece, go ahead.
It's always interesting because when you are asked to go and work on something that's away from home in a different country, you have no expectation. You can read a bit about a country, have an idea of what the environment will be, but you don't actually know. And as I say, when we were in Russia, we broke certain rules, and you could tell that something you thought was perfectly ordinary was not there. And likewise, you know, I've worked in the Philippines and discovered some bits of the work are very similar and others are very different. I've worked in Mumbai in India, are very different. It's the only time I've waited in the first morning on the first day of shooting for an elephant to be brought onto the set with a priest to bless the project. And if the elephant decides it's not a good day to start, you don't start. And the elephant didn't think it was a good day to start, so we all went home. And, you know, you just go, okay, this is how it works here. And I remember being very surprised in India because every film set I've ever worked on always has what's called a first assistant director. And he is the man or woman who is responsible for running the set. You know, he is the sergeant major. He's the guy who you listen to all the time. And on this Indian film shoot, they didn't have one. Just a whole load of people, producers, director, production designer, camera operator, everyone had an opinion, and they all just shouted at each other until somebody decided what to do. And when I first saw it, I had no idea how we'd get through a day's work, but strangely, it did work. But very, very unusual. And it is one of those things. I mean, I stick bits of rubber on people for a living. It's a silly job. Let's face it. Okay. It's not important. I'm not a doctor, a nurse, a fireman, or a soldier, or any, I stick bits of rubber on people. And it's very strange when you go somewhere, and it's lovely when people respect what you do. But it's also interesting when you realize that they have no idea what you do. And so you're then trying to explain, sometimes in a language you don't speak, why you need certain things and why you want to do certain things a certain way. Why do I want to spray the car park with blood, to test something? And I find all of that really interesting. I mean, building monsters and creatures is great fun, but the working with people from around the world trying to solve problems, some of which are very silly, is actually the real pleasure, I think.
John, interesante respuesta, porque dice que, seré breve, él hace una reflexión muy interesante. Dice que una vez estuvo grabando en Filipinas y en la India, y en el set entraron un elefante, y si el elefante decidía que la película se hacía o no, o sea, como que imagino que agachando a algo, se hacía o no hacía. ¿A qué va con eso? Él dice que él, lo que más le fascina a su trabajo es cuando se embarca, digamos, aventuras donde no sabe dónde lo llevan, cuando conoce esas culturas, por ejemplo, la pregunta que le hiciste sobre Gengis Khan, y él dice que le gusta que admire el trabajo, pero también él dice que siente, en palabras de él, que su trabajo es algo, la palabra sí es como que sí, o sea, él dice, no soy un médico, soy una persona que se gana la vida colocando piezas de plástico en la cara de la gente, pero que le gusta, por ejemplo, cuando los directores le respetan el trabajo. O sea, por ejemplo, cuando le dice un director, yo voy a echar sangre en esta escena, en la cámara, y el director hace. Entonces dice que eso es lo hermoso de este trabajo. Resumiendo.
Qué bueno, porque ahí yo quiero preguntarle que nos cuente una anécdota acerca de su nominación, porque bueno, yo tengo todos los libros, pero solo son los que están por aquí. Bueno, él sabe, son bastantes. Y subimos, pero bueno, yo quiero preguntarle cómo fue su experiencia en la nominación. Yo sé que hay que felicitarlo y también hay que destacar otro trabajo de él, y es que en El Quinto Elemento, uy, man, es increíble esa película y el tema de los monstruos, que él hizo el tema de los monstruos. Entonces, que nos hable de eso, sobre la nominación que tuvo para Harry Potter, y también que nos hable sobre cómo fue la experiencia en El Quinto Elemento, más que todo mirar el tema de La Soprano. Bueno, que ahí dice que Imba Mulay estaba la soprano, ¿no? Gracias a todo ese ingenio.
Okay, I know you saw the boots, so let's split it in two. Just first tell us about or any anecdote that you got being on the Oscars with your nomination, and also, and I'm happy that John asked you about the Fifth Element, the creation of those monsters, and now a new classic. So the camera is yours. Tell us whatever you want about your Oscar nomination and also the Fifth Element.
Okay, Oscar nomination. Lovely. I did 10 years of Harry Potter, and we got the Oscar nomination for the very last film. And so it was a great honor. It was a wonderful thing to get, and was good fun. Going to LA, going to the Oscars is, great. We didn't win, but I didn't think we would. I felt Potter was very very much a mainstream thing, and in terms of makeup, I think we did some very good makeups. We did some very good characters, but there were other films that did fantastic makeups as well. The makeup that won, which was the Margaret Thatcher makeup on Meryl Streep. One of the people who won was a guy called Mark Coulier, who was one of my crew on Harry Potter. And actually did a huge amount of work in the final Harry Potter. So, I didn't win, but a friend of mine did. So that's fine. You don't do these things to win awards, and also you have to remember a lot of time passes between doing the job and ending up at some awards ceremony. And so you've almost forgotten about it because you are now dealing with some other project. And so it sort of reminds you, oh, yeah, we did that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or whatever. Because very often these things are made, we're involved a year before they even start shooting the movie. And then they have to shoot the movie, then they have to put it together, and then it has to go out to the public. So a lot of time can pass. But it's interesting what you say, referencing The Fifth Element. There's a brand new book coming out this year, I think, about the entire making of The Fifth Element, being done by a French company with the blessing of Luc Besson. And it will have a lot of material in it that's never been seen before. And I've contributed a lot to this book, and I'm looking forward to seeing it when it comes out. But no, Fifth Element was one of the most satisfying movies I've ever worked on, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because I had no idea what I was doing. I had never done a big creature movie with these big things they were talking about. And I said to the producer, I've never done this. And he said, but you know everyone who has. You can make it work. And it was the first time they introduced me to budgeting on a computer and all sorts of things that now you just take for granted. But it was lovely because Luc Besson knew his material, and he was very, very clear about something being right or wrong, which is lovely. For somebody like me, I don't want a director who's always going, oh, I don't know, is it blue, is it green, should it be bigger, should it be smaller? I don't want to hear that. I want somebody to go, it looks like this. I feel strongly that it should have wings or whatever it is, so that you know that you're not wasting your time throwing endless ideas and concept art and models as somebody who doesn't even know what they want. Luke was the opposite. He knew exactly what he wanted. And it was actually great because 7 or 8 months, it was not a lot of time for the work they wanted done. And so it had to be very streamlined, very much like a factory. And that was good, and building the things. I mean, I had a wonderful guy called Gary Pollard who came up with all the different Mangalore characters. And that was a pleasure. And we did the diva, who was this huge blue makeup on Luc Besson's wife. We had to test it in secret. Nobody was allowed to see it. It was one of those things where none of the cast saw it. And this alien diva sings in the opera. And the first time the curtains open is the first time anybody actually saw it. And he filmed the audience, not her, because he wanted to get all the real reactions from all the cast to what she looked like. And that was fascinating. My concern was she was standing in the Royal Opera House in London at night. They had operas on earlier, but we were shooting overnight. And this poor woman, we'd put in a foam rubber suit. She was on 14-inch stilts. Underneath, pounds and pounds of foam latex, which is what we used then. And she had contacts, she had everything. She was completely covered. And she was about 3 feet from the edge of the stage. And all I was worried about was her just disappearing into the orchestra pit. which she didn't do, thank God. But it was great. And then when we did they were called Mondashawan, they're huge gold creatures, sort of aliens in spacesuits. And they were lovely because we'd never done anything like that. So we had to do mock-ups and tests. And I did go to them and say, there isn't enough time. And the producer said, if we move the sequence to the very end of the schedule, so it's the last thing we shoot, is there enough time? And I sort of went, yes, thinking, okay, I don't really know because I've never built them before. But we did it and we got them there. And every single person was inside, there were 7 of them, I think. They were inside suits with a television screen and earphones and a microphone. And each one of them had one of my crew on the radio to them because they couldn't see, they couldn't hear. They were totally encased in a clanking fiberglass robot suit. So my guys were just on the thing going, right, left foot forward, right foot forward, stop, turn round. Because they wanted them all marching, down corridors and things. And the corridors were only centimeters wider than the creatures. It was very funny. You just had to laugh and you just think, this is what we do for a living. It's stupid, but great fun.
As a fan of the movie, thank you, and I will translate. I will be quick. John, tranquilo, seré rápido. Lo del Oscar, él dice que tú sabes que él hizo el maquillaje de todas las de Potter. Él dice que listo, que él tomó muy bien la nominación, que él siente que quien ganó, que por cierto era el equipo de él, que ganó, tú sabes, por la Dama de Hierro,
Sí, claro.
dice que él siente que lo hizo muy bien. Lo de, seré breve con lo del quinto elemento. Se viene un libro, él participó en el libro, son cosas que ni siquiera se han visto en el detrás de cámaras. Lo de la esposa de Besón, o sea, la diva, sí era un traje completamente de Juan Látex. Esto tenía unos tacones altísimos, lentes de contacto. La reacción que tiene el público del salón es real porque nadie ha visto maquillaje. O sea, cuando quitan el telón y la gente se sorprende, solo quiso hacer Besón, quiso grabar a la gente. El miedo era que se cayera ella porque en realidad era un traje muy complejo de usar. Dice que no, muy profesional. Y la última toma que grabaron por lo complejo de los trajes fue lo de los robots con las pantallas. Dicen que todos los miembros del equipo tuvieron que ponerle aparatos de sonido para decirles izquierda, derecha. Y él, palabras de él, nos dice, lo que hacemos es muy tonto, pero es hermoso. Y
No,
dice
no
que
es tonto,
Dudman le dio una libertad increíble que nadie la da.
Sí, para nada. Todo tiene su medida, que son importantes. Bueno, 2 últimas preguntas. No es, bueno, esto sí quisiera facilitarlo, porque pienso de que ha hecho un buen trabajo. No es pregunta, felicítalo por estas 2 producciones, The Sicilian and The Fantasies. Y por último, ¿cómo define su trabajo en una palabra?
Okay. There is only one question, but John said this is not a question. He really loved your work on the Sicilian and fantasies, but no. The question is the same one that John always does to the audience. Try to define your career, your work, your body of work in one word.
One word. Lucky. Just lucky.
And I love how it sounds in Spanish. Afortunado. And we are also lucky ones. Nosotros también somos afortunados. Of seeing your job. John, ahí lo dijo.
Claro. Bueno, y también hay que recalcar palabras de Newman, ¿no? Nuestro querido Carl Newman, el que hizo las acrobacias en Batman del 89, que te envía saludos. Que muchas gracias por hacer posible todo este tema de Joker. Solo mencionarle eso. Es un gran fan del canal y estuvo acá en el canal.
And this is our word for Carl Newman. He was the one that did the stunts on Batman. No, he said that thanks for making real the Joker of Jack Nicholson. There are just words from that actor. He's fan of the channel. He was here and he wanna tell you that.
Well, I was, again, lucky. I was very lucky that I had done a movie with the same production designer as Batman, Anton Furst, and he was doing a movie called High Spirits for Neil Jordan, and they needed a whole load of very comic zombies, which I did. And he thought these were great, so he asked me to come in and meet Tim Burton for Batman. And I was very young, very green. You know, I didn't know a lot. But I had to go and meet Jack Nicholson at the Dorchester Hotel because it was he who chose. It wasn't the director, it wasn't the producers, it was Jack Nicholson. And I got on really well with Jack Nicholson. He was very nice, you know, pleasant to me. It was, you know, okay. But then it was made very clear to me by one of the producers. You know, they said, we've paid a lot of money for Nicholson. Don't cover up his face. We've paid for it. And it was interesting because I had to go to Burbank and get his life cast. And then I had to do a series of sculpts to try and find a look that would say Joker to Batman fans, but would also not camouflage Jack Nicholson. And that was the piece that was difficult. But we chose a particular place, and Jack Nicholson approved it. But until we did the first makeup test, I had no idea. You know, it's like, is this going to work? What do we think? Also, the first makeup test taught me a great deal. I had to change all the coloring because you think this is a white guy. You know, he's got a white face and he's working on dark sets and he's having a fight with a guy in a black suit. So what's the exposure? If you expose your scene, if you light your scene so that you can see all the detail of the black, he bleaches out, he disappears. If you light it so that the white in the face is all clear and his skin texture is clear, everything else is in shadow. And I had to work with the DOP very carefully to find the right set of colors so that, yes, the guy looks white. You know, he looks white. That's the story. But in fact, actually, there's all sorts of shadow colors in there. And on set, he actually looked quite grubby, quite not clean. But it was the only way to get it so that when you put the two together, there was an area that you could light the set and light the people, and it worked. But that took some finding. I didn't know that to start with. But Jack Nicholson made it easy because he was such a professional and he sat in the chair. He let you do everything. He was very amusing, nice guy. And yet when he went on the set and he just turned it on, you know, it was breathtaking. And I loved it working on that film. You know, I remember the first time the special effects chief I saw, he called me over and he said, "You have to come with me now." And I went, okay. And he took me into this shed, and it was the first time I'd seen it, but it was the complete Batmobile. 20 feet long, massive thing. He just said, "Do you want to get in it?" It was like, yes. So, you know, all of that was lovely. It was great. It was just a pleasure to work on Batman. Lovely film.
Por favor, tienes que referenciarle. Solamente es para despedirnos que maravillosamente su trabajo en Willow. No. en Willow y High Spirit es increíble.
Es que te lo voy a decir, gracias a High Spirits, él le dio el trabajo y siendo muy joven para maquillar a Jack Nicholson. Para los tonos, son tonos de sombra, por eso es que se ve así de oscuro. Y lo primero que le pidieron cuando llegó al set de Batman es que se subiera al Batimóvil. Solo te digo eso.
Wow, increíble.
Y que diga redes.
Sí. No, redes, creo que no tiene, pero que diga todo lo que tiene que saber para buscarlo en su página web y felicitarlo por Willow y Craig Freedom. Eso lo digo eso ya.
Cry Freedom, la de
Denzel.
Okay, the camera is yours, so you can invite people to visit your network, your page. John, wanna say, yeah, he really loves your job in Willow, in Cry Freedom. I don't got time to mention all the movies that I love that you work in. So the camera is yours to send a bit hi to wherever you want, to Colombia, to your friend, and tell the people to visit your pages to know your work.
Gosh. Well, I'm very grateful that you like the work I've done over the years. It's all been done with large crews of people. Nobody in my world building rubber monsters ever does it all on their own. It's a team effort. And over the last 45 years, I've worked with some incredible teammates. And I think that's the thing that I take away from it, is that I've worked on some incredible teams. When you start working on a movie, you have no idea if it's going to be successful or very bad or very good or become well known. You don't know any of that. Sometimes when you're standing on the set and you watch something, you think, wow, this is going to be amazing. And then sometimes you're wrong. And you won't know for a year or a year and a half whether it has actually worked. But I look back and I say that word lucky. I have been lucky enough to have been in the right place at the right time, to have worked with some amazing directors, producers, actors. But most especially, I've worked with amazing sculptors and painters and makeup artists and hairdressers and costumiers and, wig makers, all of it. That is the bit that I feel very lucky about. I can only say, there's lots of things I haven't managed to do, and I would love to have achieved certain things in certain places. We all have regrets and we all have things we wish we'd done. But I look back and I know that the 10-year-old Nick Dudman would look at what I have done and where I've been and be very happy. So I sit back and I go, I've had a very lucky career and I'm very grateful for it, but it is down to other people.
Lo resumiré, John dice que esto lo logró gracias a la gente tan increíble con la que trabaja.
Qué bueno. No, hay que felicitarlo. Congratulations, Nick. Y también gracias por ver la entrevista de John Carrione. Me emocionó mucho que la hayas visto. Me emocionó mucho.
John said that not only thank you, that he really is happy that you saw the interview, John Caglione, and I think John Caglione will be back here. John Caglione va a volver, ¿cierto?
Sí, claro.
And so, thanks.
Very clever man. Yes.
Thank you so much, man. God bless you. Y great week. Thank you so much, Nick, for all.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
It's a pleasure for you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye,
Okay,
Nick. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.